Seeing things for what they are. What do I mean by this? Well, a little while ago, I wrote this video down when I was snowboarding. And when I was snowboarding, I realized something. I was on the snow lift. I was just sitting there in the quiet by myself, waiting to get to the top. And I was just looking at everyone going down the hill on their snowboard or their skis. And I was like, what is happening right now? And I realized going up a mountain with a snowboard, watching people stand on boards, slide on snow down the mountain, spending time with friends, being outside, enjoying nature, and having fun. And I realized how incredible that was. I was like, wow, this is what's happening. Like, we're just outside on a mountain, riding down the mountain on a board. It was just so beautiful to realize. And that's what I mean when I say seeing things for what they are, because in that moment, I didn't just see snowboarding. I saw people riding down a mountain on a snowboard, hanging out with friends, having fun. And I realized that I could connect this to faith as well. And in the month of August, I'm talking about our perspective on life and the perspective that God wants us to have. And the truth is that sometimes we see things so many times that we stop noticing them and giving appreciation to them. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 7 different things. We can see something without actually noticing it. Jesus told people to look at ordinary things. Familiarity can make us take good things for granted. Gratitude changes I have to into I get to. Slowing down lets you actually experience your life. Creation can point us back to the Creator. And your life is mostly made of ordinary moments. So to get started, we can see something without actually noticing it. And what I want to explain here is the difference between seeing something and noticing something. So think about you driving to work. 5 days a week, you drive to work, you drive probably the same route, the same way, you know how long it takes, you know where to go, and during that drive, you're just on autopilot. You've done it so many times that you're just going through the motions of getting to work. And I think this is how we might view so many things in our life. It's not just the way to work, but it's also at work, the interactions at work, the things you do at work, outside of work. It's eating, it's hanging out with your family. You've done it so many times, you're just on autopilot. And eventually you get to a point where your whole life, you're just on autopilot, going through the motions, doing these things, but not slowing down and noticing things for what they are. And even something like a sunset can be so beautiful if we slow down and appreciate it. Sometimes we might just see it and think, oh, nice, it's sundown, 7:30, whatever time. And we just get used to it and we don't realize what it really is. If we look at Psalm chapter 19, verse 1, he says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. So a sunset isn't just a sun changing the colors of the clouds, but it's pointing us to the Creator, pointing us to who made the sun at a certain angle, change the color of the sky at a certain time of day into some pink and orange and yellow beauty just in the sky. Like, it points us towards God and points us towards the Creator of that. And this is what I experienced when I was snowboarding. I didn't just see snowboarding. I saw something that existed because God created mountains. He created snow. He created all types of weather. He created the materials for the freaking snowboard. He created this world and everything in it, which led to snowboarding. And my point that I'm trying to make here is that sometimes the problem isn't that we've stopped getting good things and stopped having good things in our lives, but it's that we stop noticing that they're good, which is the point of this video, is that we should see things for what they are. Which leads me to the next point here, is that Jesus told people to look at ordinary things. All throughout the Bible, he's given us parables of birds and flowers and seeds and vines and farms and farmers and water, like ordinary things in everyday life. And recently I've read the book of Luke here, and in chapter 12, he says something very beautiful. Luke chapter 12, verse 24, Jesus says, consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. And a few verses later, in verse 27, he says, consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. In both of those verses, he says, consider. Consider the ravens. Consider how the wildflowers grow. He's telling his followers to actually pay attention and look at it and what is happening with the ravens and with the flowers. He's saying to look at the birds and the flowers and to learn something about God, not to spend every second of your attention and of your lives trying to find some deep meaning in random things, but just paying attention to the birds and the flowers. Like, the birds don't have barns and they don't have places to store food for the problems that might come. The flowers grow from a little seed or whatever flowers grow from, and they bloom into this beautiful flower. And he says that not even Solomon, the richest guy in the Bible, not even Solomon was dressed as a flower. That's how beautiful he is calling this flower, because that is God's creation. And if that's how beautiful the flower is, how beautiful is God? So beautiful. More beautiful than we can imagine. Which, this all leads me to the third point here, is that familiarity can make us take good things for granted. If we take my snowboarding story into consideration here, incredible things can become ordinary because we're used to them. For example, someone who lives in Montana and they work at Glacier National Park and they drive that road every day up to the top to work. This is such a big example because personally this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, is that road and the mountains, and oh, it's so beautiful. But if you drive that road every day, eventually you're going to lose that wow factor because you've seen it so much. It's a part of your everyday life. Every day you drive up there to work. And if we bring this into normal life, just something so simple like waking up, being able to see and hear and walk and eat and digest. This is obviously so broad and simple and you don't have to think about this, but just being able to understand how crazy it is. Like, we can see and hear, like, go outside and laugh and have fun and drive somewhere. Like, free will to love God. Whole different topic. But since we've experienced driving and seeing and listening hundreds of thousands of times, we just automatically think normal. But just because it's normal and just because it happens every day doesn't mean that it's insignificant or that it doesn't matter or it doesn't deserve appreciation. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 13 says that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. He's saying find satisfaction in all their toil. Toil is like hard work. I explained this a little bit in the last video, but it's not all about the reward. It's about the journey. It's about what you learn, who you become, who you grow into, who God calls you to be on the way. And then the reward of all those things is the gift. Understanding that you don't always need some huge gift and blessing from God to appreciate life or appreciate God is just so great when you can bring this gratefulness into your everyday life and be grateful for the little things. And this leads me into the next point here, is that gratitude changes I have to into I get to. You probably heard this before if you've ever seen motivational speakers or whatnot, but it's such a blessing to be able to change your mindset from everything being an obligation and everything being I have to do this into I get to, and just understanding that it's a part of life and that God has put us here for a reason. And when we appreciate these little things, it just makes life so much better. Just having to go to work is so boring. Having to get through the day, having to wait till you get home to watch TV, having to wait till you eat, getting to go to work, socialize with your coworkers, spend time working, whatever it is that you do. There's a verse out there that says that we should work in all things as if we're working for God. If you can learn to dedicate your work to God, that I believe is one of the best things anyone could do, is that bringing God into your workplace. Now, this whole video isn't about pretending that everything is perfect and everything is enjoyable, because there are a lot of bad things that happen in life, but it's being able to recognize the good that is already there, the good that we have. And 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 18 says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." It says to give thanks in all circumstances, even when something difficult and something hard is happening in your life. You can still be thankful that God is there with you, and God will be with you through the trials. There's that verse that says, be grateful for many hard trials, because then you'll know that God is growing you, or God is working with you, or growing you, something along those lines. But this gratitude isn't gonna erase these problems, but it's recognizing what's actually happening and seeing things for what they are. Seeing that this hard season is really just God growing you. Which leads me to the fifth point here, is that slowing down lets you actually experience your life. In the last video I spoke about this, but for me personally, I'm always thinking about the next thing. Especially in my past, I've always thought about my first bike, that CX6R. I always thought about getting that S1000 and how bad I wanted that S1000. Thinking about the six-pack and how bad I want that six-pack. Thinking about how bad I want money. Like, thinking about the next goal that I have. Just wanting it so bad. And then before, like, now I'm working towards different things, but before, when I got that bike, it sent me, like, it put me in a halt. Like, okay, I got this, now what do I do? But that was because it was like attainable. If you're going for something like that you can constantly grow, like for example a YouTube channel, if you can continue to grow that, I think that's a better goal. And then like let the bike be a part of that. Like focus on something you can constantly grow in, and then things will come. It'll be a fruit of that. But the point here that I'm trying to make is that if you're always focused on that next thing, you can so easily miss the current thing that you're experiencing. You can so easily miss the journey and the process and the days that are difficult, the days that are easy, the days that you learn something new. Like you can miss that so easily. And even going back to the snowboarding story, I could be sliding down the hill and I could be thinking about what's coming next. When am I going to eat? When are we going home? What's next? You know, even when I'm snowboarding down the hill. But if we look at Psalm chapter 46 verse 10, it says, he says, be still and know that I am God. The context of this chapter is recognizing God's authority and his presence. The principle says, be still. Stop constantly moving. Stop constantly being in the future and focused on that next thing. But be still and know that he is God. Thank him for that. Enjoy the moment. And the next point here is that creation can point us back to the Creator. Going back to the snowboarding story, once again, I was appreciating in that moment something that God made. God made the mountain. He made the snow. He made all the trees and the wind and the weather and the materials. Like he made that. And the interactions between humans. If we look at the book of Romans, chapter 1, verse 20, Paul says, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. He says, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities. He's saying creation is telling us something about God. If we look at the world and we look at everything that he created, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen from this. It shows us his eternal power and divine nature. It shows us his beauty and his power and his wisdom of how everything works. Like if you think about science and everything that goes into it, if you've ever seen those videos about like how complicated the human body is, and that's just the human body. I mean, there's hundreds of species and plants and trees and different weathers and the clouds, and the way the world works is so crazy. And it points to the Creator and how powerful and smart he is to make everything work. Not to mention, he did that in 6 days. Imagine what he could do like in eternity. That is crazy. Like we'll never be able to understand it until we're there. But a little off topic here, but that is just crazy to try and wrap your head around. You just can't. God is outside of our minds. We can't comprehend his power. Anyways, the point of this video is not saying that you need to analyze the bread you eat and the sandwich and all these like simple things. It's recognizing that we shouldn't become numb to an ordinary life so that we stop appreciating it. We can enjoy something simply because it's enjoyable, but occasionally we should stop and recognize that this is actually a gift. This is a gift from God. This is a blessing. And our life is made mostly of ordinary moments. I actually was pondering on this a couple weeks ago, and I was wondering if life ever gets any better. In the video Recognizing Patterns, I mentioned how when I came back to God, that I was on this high point. I was on fire. I was super motivated. And then when that motivation and fire left and faded away, that I would fall. Now I've been able to realize that life isn't all about being on fire. Life isn't all about being motivated, but life is a bunch of ordinary days, a bunch of ordinary moments. We're not always experiencing a high point of our life. There's a specific timeline that a lot of people look at, and they'll imagine going through school, right? You start at school, you graduate high school, and then you get a job or you go to school. But either way, you get a job and then you get married and then make money and buy a house and reach a goal, have kids, travel. You build like this life, right? And there's like a set life that most people imagine, right? But most of your life aren't those moments. It's an ordinary day. It's an ordinary morning, a regular workout, a regular meal, a regular drive. Like your life is full of these. There's only going to be a few days or weeks where you're on top of the world. That is your life, and that's what's important. So being able to recognize that and not going through your entire life on autopilot, waiting for a great day to come. If you're always waiting for something bigger to happen, you can miss the most important part. And going back to the snowboard story one last time, nothing really changed other than my perspective. People still went down the hill. People still went up the hill. It was still snow on a mountain, but I viewed it other than just snowboarding. And that's what this whole month is about. The month of August is being in a different perspective, being in the perspective that God has called us to. God doesn't always need to give us something new for life to be great, but it's being able to slow down and recognize Him in what He's already given us and what's already happening in our life. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this helps somebody. I hope this planted a seed in someone's life, and thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.